Today we're sewing a great summer pattern that offers a lot of versatility. This is the Wickham shorts and skirt pattern by Cashmerette. This pattern is intended for stretch fabrics. The fabric that I'm using in this video is a rib knit. The fabric that I'm using does not fray, but if the knit fabric that you're using is prone to fraying, you're going to want to add the extra step of finishing your raw edges together after sewing every seam. There are 3 views offered for this pattern. We'll be sewing views A and B. First, we'll sew the attached skirt and shorts with no pockets, followed by the standalone shorts with pockets. Join me for this sew along and add some variety to your summer wardrobe. Let's get started. Place the 2 shorts front pieces right sides together along the crotch curve and pin the crotch curve. Sew or serge this seam with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and press the seam to the right as worn. Once that seam is sewn and the seam allowance is pressed toward the right side, you can choose to top stitch that seam allowance in place from top to bottom 1/8 of an inch away from the original seam line. I'm going to be using a zigzag stitch. We're going to connect the 2 shorts back pieces in the same way, placing them right sides together along the crotch curve, sewing or serging with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and then pressing the seam to the left side as worn. And once that seam is sewn, you can choose once again to top stitch the seam allowance in place from top to bottom. Here is my constructed shorts front piece once again, and I'm going to attach the side panels. Place the side panels right sides together with the side of the front shorts matching the single notches, and pin in place. Sew or serge your seams with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seams toward the front shorts. Once those seams are sewn, you can choose to top stitch the seam allowances in place from top to bottom as we did previously. Now I'll place the shorts back piece right sides together with the side panels, matching the double notches, and pin in place. Then we can sew or serge these seams with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seams toward the back shorts and top stitch if preferred. So here are my constructed shorts so far with the right side of the back shorts facing me. I'm going to take my gusset piece and place it right sides together with the back inseam matching the double notches, and pin in place. Sew or serge this seam with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seam toward the gusset and top stitch if desired. Now that our gusset is attached to the back piece, we can attach it to the front. Placing the inseam of the front shorts piece right sides together with the gusset, matching the single notches, and pin in place. Then we can sew or serge this seam with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seam toward the gusset and top stitch if desired. Once that's finished, we can set these shorts aside for now. Here is one of my lower skirt pieces. I'm going to attach the bottom curve of the skirt yoke front piece to the top curve of the skirt and pin in place. Then we can sew this seam with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seam down toward the lower skirt and top stitch if desired. And repeat to attach the bottom of your back yoke piece to the top of your remaining skirt piece. Once again, sewing or serging at 3/8 of an inch, pressing the seam downward and top stitching optionally. Now we can place our front and back skirt pieces right sides together and pin the side seams matching those yoke seams. Then we can sew both of those side seams at a 3/8 inch seam allowance and press the seams toward the back. And I chose to use a wider zigzag stitch to finish those side seams together on both sides. Since I have not chosen the pockets option for these shorts, I'm going to place the skirt and the shorts right sides together along the upper edge. If you've chosen to add pockets to these shorts, there is an alternative option noted in the pattern instructions, where you will place the wrong side of the shorts on the right side of the skirt and pin. Take a moment to check that you are attaching the back side of the shorts to the back side of the skirt and the front to the front. And then pin them together along the upper edge, matching your notches and seams. Sew or serge all the way around with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and if you're using your regular sewing machine, you can also finish the raw edges together all the way around. I've cut 1.5 inch wide elastic according to the size chart in the pattern instructions. I'm going to overlap the raw edges by 1 inch and zigzag back and forth to secure. And I'll trim the excess allowance close to the stitching line. Now I'm going to divide the elastic into 4 equal parts, just using pins to make these markings. Now I'll place the edge of the elastic at the top of the skirt, just overlapping that seam allowance that we just created. So the remainder of the elastic will extend beyond the seam. Pin all the way around, matching those quarter markings with the center front, center back, and side notches of the skirt. Now I'm going to sew the elastic to the top of the skirt, sewing right on top of my seam allowance, catching the bottom edge of the elastic, all the way around with a zigzag stitch of 2.5 width and 2.5 length. Now that that's attached, we're going to open up the shorts and the skirt away from each other, with the elastic now oriented toward the shorts. Then we're going to understitch. We're going to sew the elastic to the tops of the shorts, 1/4 inch away from the seam that we just sewed, using your preferred stretch stitch. Now we're also going to sew the elastic to the shorts at each of the short seams, from the top to the bottom of the elastic. We're going to be using a zigzag stitch with a width of 0.5 and a length of 2.5. Once again, doing this at each of the seams. Now we can turn the garment fully right side out. And we can press the waistband all the way around, favoring the seam to the inside of the garment. Now to hem the shorts, we're going to press the raw edges of the shorts to the wrong side by 1 inch all the way around for both legs. If you've sewn the shorts to the skirt as I have, the visible side of the shorts will have the seam allowances, so the side of the shorts that touches your body is nice and smooth. So you can choose which way you want to press your hems, to the inside or to the outside. I'm choosing to press my hems to the visible side of the shorts to the wrong side. I like the way that looks on the outside. Then I'll zigzag stitch close to those raw edges all the way around. For the bottom of the skirt, I've gone ahead and pressed the raw edges to the wrong side by 1/2 inch all the way around. And we're going to stitch that hem in place close to the raw edge once again. And lastly, to make it easier to tell the difference between the front and back of the skirt, I've added a garment label. I sewed the label at the center back seam, sewing through the shorts layer only. And now view A, the skirt with the shorts with no pockets, is complete. Now we're making view B, the standalone shorts with pockets. Place your shorts front pieces right sides together along the crotch curve and pin in place. Sew or serge this seam with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seam toward the right as worn, and if you like, you can top stitch that seam allowance in place from top to bottom using your preferred stretch stitch, as I'm doing in this video. And repeat the same steps to attach and sew your two back pieces together. Sewing at 3/8 of an inch, pressing that seam allowance toward the left side as worn, and then top stitching if you like. Here are the wrong sides of my side panel pieces, and we're going to attach elastic along the upper slanted edges. I'm using 3/8 inch wide clear elastic, and I'm going to cut the elastic just a little bit longer than the slanted edges so I have something to hold on to on either end. Now I'll align the top edge of the elastic with the top slanted edge of the side panel, and I'll sew it in place with a zigzag stitch 3.5mm width and 3.5mm length, doing this for both pieces. Now I'll trim off any excess elastic, and we're going to fold the slanted edges and the elastic to the wrong side by 3/8 of an inch. And then we'll top stitch those slanted edges in place using your preferred stretch stitch, a twin needle, or your cover stitch machine. Now we're going to attach the side panels to the pocket pieces, aligning the notches and pinning in place. So the wrong side of our shorts panel is facing the right side of the pocket piece. And we're going to baste these edges in place with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now that the pockets are attached to the side panels, we're going to top stitch the bottom of the pocket to the side panel with a zigzag stitch 0.5mm wide and 2.5mm long, doing this for both pieces. Here's my shorts front piece, and I'm going to attach the side panels, aligning the panel with its corresponding side of the front shorts, matching the notches and pinning in place. We'll sew these seams with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seams toward the front and top stitch if desired. Now we can place our back shorts piece right sides together with the front shorts piece along those side panels and pin in place. Then we can sew or serge these seams just as before with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seam allowances toward the back piece and top stitch if desired. Here are my shorts with the right side of the back piece facing me. I'm going to place the gusset and the back inseam right sides together, matching the double notches and pinning in place. Sew or serge the gusset to the back shorts with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seam toward the gusset and top stitch if you want. Now that the gusset is attached to the back piece, we can repeat the process to attach the gusset to the front piece, placing the open end of the gusset and the front shorts inseam right sides together and pinning, matching your single notches. Sew or serge just as you did on the other side of the gusset, 3/8 inch seam allowance, pressing the seam toward the gusset and top stitching if you prefer. I've cut a piece of 1 inch wide elastic according to the measurement chart listed in the pattern instructions. I'm going to overlap the raw edges by 1 inch and zigzag back and forth to secure. And trim the raw edges of the elastic close to the stitching. Then I'll divide the elastic into quarters And I'll match those quarter points with my center front, center back, and the notches at the sides of the shorts, aligning the edge of the elastic with the raw edge of the shorts and pinning in place, right sides together. Then we can sew the elastic to the shorts all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, with a zigzag stitch with a 2.5 millimeter length and 2.5 millimeter width. Now that the elastic is attached to the upper edge of the shorts, we're going to flip the elastic to the inside of the shorts so that the fabric is wrapped around the top of the elastic at the inside. And we're going to top stitch along the top of the pants right along that upper lip of fabric with the same stitch as we used previously. Zigzag stitch with a length and width of 2.5. Now that we've top stitched the upper edge, we're going to turn the elastic to the inside once more, concealing the elastic on the inside. Then we're going to take it to the machine and stitch in the ditch of each short seam using a zigzag stitch with a width of 0.5 and a length of 2.5. And if you like, you can pin each seam in place first. And now that that's pinned, I'll stitch at each seam. Now to hem the bottom of the shorts, press the raw edges of the shorts to the inside of the garment by 1 inch all the way around, for both legs. Then we can stitch the hems in place, sewing close to the raw edges on the inside all the way around. Using your preferred stretch stitch, you can also use a twin needle or your cover stitch machine. And now the standalone shorts with pockets are complete. Thank you for watching this sew along. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss notifications every time a new full-length sewing tutorial comes out. And I'll see you in the next video.